psychologist look like? I can send you that information.
I'd have to, yeah.
Yeah, because she got a full breakdown on what she can and can't eat from her skin doctor. So like, no more dairy, no whey for her. She basically just eats fish, leafy greens. Instead, I do all the cooking, and it's drastic. And just because of the breakdown that they gave her, it's like 6 pages long. She can't eat.
Yeah, I definitely need to do something like that. I've been pretty good job at eliminating it. I kind of almost came back to a bodybuilding diet.
Okay.
So the energy levels are slowly improving.
Yeah.
So that's helping, but I'm also doing a shit ton of supplements.
Are you?
Oh yeah, like all vitamin D, B complex, CoQ10.
Are you doing
glutamine, creatine?
Don't do CoQ10. Do ubiquinol.
Ubiquinol?
That's the reduced form of it.
Okay.
And so all ubiquinol comes out of Japan. It's their version of aspirin. They don't really take a lot of aspirin. They take ubiquinol.
Okay.
So if you're getting ubiquinol in the United States, it all comes from Konica, which is the pharmaceutical corporation in Japan that produces it.
Okay.
And so it has a reuptake of about 85% more. So if you take 300 milligrams of ubiquinol, you're getting about 250 of that active ingredient.
I'm writing that down. That's good intel.
What are you doing for energy? Any cordyceps or anything like that?
I'm not. Well, I mean, because I wasn't sure if the chronic fatigue was mitochondrial dysfunction. So that's why I was doing the creatine, glutamine.
How are you doing in terms of walking upstairs? You get winded still?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I would talk to your doctor about getting Cialis.
Shit.
No, it's a vasodilator. That's what it was designed for. It's very cardioprotective. So it was designed as heart medication. They realized that most men have ED because they have really bad hearts.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it was designed for the heart. It's probably one of the best quality of life drugs you can have.
Interesting.
Yeah, so talk to your doctor about Cialis if you're still encountering that, because I guarantee you just the vasodilation, generally you'll see energy increase probably by at least 3 or 4.
Write that down.
And then, are you still encountering metabolic disorder?
Well, welcome to the Higher Education and VA Educational Benefits Workshop. My name is Monique. I am the Program Support Specialist for the Veterans Military Families Program at the Security Department. We've got 3 speakers today. I'm going to go ahead and do their introduction for all 3, and then I will transition through their presentations. So first we'll have Dave Millay. He served 25 years in the U.S. Army, retiring in October 2009. He served as the Director of Veterans Resource Center, Eastern Washington University since 2012, where he assists veterans and service members and military-connected family members with VA educational benefits. Okay. And Peter Lamont served as an apprenticeship instructor for the Laborers Apprenticeship from 1997 to 2016. He also served as the chair of the Washington State Apprenticeship Coordinators Association from 2004 to 2016. He worked with transitioning military members from 2004 to 2016 in the apprenticeship role. He is now filling the apprenticeship slot for the Washington Department of Veterans Affairs, filling in for deployed reservists. Seth Mayer serves as the Veterans and Military Families Program Operator for Washington State Employment Security Department, a program that funds statewide VFOP, LEVER, and CBSR positions to assist both employers who seek veteran talent and veterans to gain the attention of those employers. Seth holds a Master of Education degree, earned while serving nearly 8 years of active duty in the U.S. Navy as a boatswain's mate aboard the USS Falcon, CG-63. Then as a meteorologist between San Nicolas Island and Naval Air Station Point Mugu, and finally as a tactical oceanographer at NES VI, serving honorably from 1987 to 2005.
Thank you. So I'm Dave. I'm the director of the Veterans Resource Center at Eastman. And we're going to spend a few minutes talking about our program. But I don't think any of us have any issues. If you have a question while we're talking, jump in, raise your hand. Whatever. I don't problem with that. So I'm going to talk about the VA education benefits. I will say up front, I am not a VA employee. I'm an employee of Eastern Washington University. We do have training requirements to be certifying officials. We have to do every year. One more verse on every year. But those are pretty good. Are there any other certifying officials in the room? Okay, got one. Chime in if you want to add something. So, so my office helps the military connected student use and VA education benefits. I was told to put training objectives up there, so I followed the instructions. We're going to talk about ed benefits. I'm also going to talk about the people aren't aware of. The state of Washington has some very good waivers for veterans and dependents. So that's something that's not tied to the VA, but I just want to make you aware of. So if you're talking to a veteran family or they're in county and they're Washington State residents living in the state, there may be some opportunities for some waivers, tuition waivers. Then another programming that can help, and then other resources outside of the VA-related resources that can help veterans figure out what they want to do with their education benefits. The big chart here, just to give you a big picture first. Some of you probably use some of these benefits. Probably a lot of you. Anybody who use the post 9/11 got their education? Yeah. I get mine to all my kids. Figured I didn't want to go to school anymore. But so post 9/11 is probably most of you are aware is the most commonly used benefit now, education benefit. You can just see by the numbers. So that's what most of our students, probably 70% of our students. I'll talk about each of these benefits in a little bit of detail. The chapter 30, old guys, old Montgomery GI Bill. Okay, some of you use that. Okay, there's not too many of them around anymore. In fact, I think they're phasing out last night and not into it anymore. We have one or two of those on my campus, and many of them we encourage them to opt into the post 9/11. So not a lot of them. Chapter 1606 we see a lot for select guard reservists. I don't know about your area, but in the GE Spokane area we have a lot of National Guard reservists that are going to school. So that's another benefit I'll mention very quickly. The REAP I won't even talk about. I took this slide off a big page somewhere. I will talk about the Dependents Education Assistance Program. Anybody ever heard or used of that one? Great program. 100% disabled veterans. That's a huge growth for colleges and universities. That population for us has gone from about 80 kids to about 180 kids. And it's challenging because you're talking to mom and dad and 17-year-old freshmen at the same time. So those are kind of a breakdown of the populations. Another one non-on-kid I will talk about that is an employment benefit is the Chapter 31. It's now used to be called Book Rehab. It's now called VRNE. All right, Veterans Readiness and Employment Benefit. It is an employment benefit through the VA, but many of the students who come to our campus for employability need a degree, undergrad or a master's. So we have a population of about 50, 60 of those students too. So not on that slide because I took it from the VA page, but I'll talk about that briefly as an input from the VA employment side. All right, very quickly, each of these, and many of you use these, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. Post 9/11. Again, the VA Ed side is working on making it easier to apply for your benefit, get better information about your benefits. So if you haven't gone to va.gov lately, it's a much cleaner page than it's been in the years. You used to use the old e-benefits page and such. va.gov, bottom right hand, there's 4 boxes, bottom left hand corner, it's all about education benefits. You can log in with ID.me. If you don't have to log in if you don't want, but they're getting better with some of their technology. I won't go into details. A lot of you know about these things, but 36 months, transfer to kids if you're on active duty. I wish they retrograded that back. We have lots of moms and dads come in and say, I got out and I couldn't give my benefits away because I got out in 2007 and I never used them and I got these college-age kids and I'm kind of screwed. What can I do with them? But that's still on. Forever GI Bill. So some of you know if you got out after 2013, it lasts forever. It's been amazing. The last 3 years, we've run into veterans who hit the 15-year mark and still have benefits on the table. And I hate to say it, they're gone. And when that happens, it stops when it stops, right in the middle of the term. So somebody goes 2006, 2007, do the math. 15 years later. It's over. Even if you got lots of months sitting on the table. There could be some ways to appeal that. Maybe you had, I think there are, if you had, say from medical reasons you can go to school, and I don't work for the VA, but we have 4 students in the last couple of years. It surprised some of us because it just stops. web link there if you want to read more about it. Posted on the Jacksonville, some stats. You can see at the bottom, $20 billion in benefits that have paid out since the Post-9/11 was enacted in August of 2009. Okay. So any comments or questions about the Post-9/11? Yes.
What I did is I was also at that point where, okay, you had no benefits. So then what we did is I had like a month or two left and we rolled it into my VRE. Did it that way.
Good point. When I talk about VRE,
okay.
I'll mention that.
All right.
VRE is a great benefit.
I wanna know.
I did the same thing.
Yeah, and VRE just changed the rules where it doesn't accumulate months. You can extend it. So
Yep.
yeah, great point. VRE is a great benefit if you qualify. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's been going to be discussed, but for those parents that are actually giving those benefits away, it does give you an additional MSO, military service obligation. So I had to do it an additional 2 months on top of, he's like you.
I did mine way 12. And luckily I won't get into details, but I was getting ready to retire, so I kind of grandfathered into it right at the last minute.
So if you do transfer your benefits to your family members, save at least 1 day of benefits for yourself, keep that in the
Yeah.
kit, because if you do ever go into VRD, it's going to double your stipend.
Yeah, I also tell active duty folks talk to me occasionally that when you're getting ready to transfer, just give 1 month to each of your family members, include yourself and your spouse, and your 8 kids or 4 kids, or even if they're only a year old. As long as you're in years and you see them, and once you get out and Mill Connect, you can move the months around. So, yeah. Any other comments about Post-9/11? Montgomery, I'm going to zip right through. If you still have it, pays out $21.50. I gave you the details, but Post-9/11, great thing about this is all the tuition money comes straight to the university, and the housing allowance and book stipend goes straight to the veteran. Old Montgomery, $21.50 is the current rate, goes straight to the student. They got to figure out how to pay tuition and live off all that. That's all they get. Most of them are expiring out. I don't think we can even opt into them anymore. I say maybe 1 or 2 on our campus still on the old Chapter 3 Montgomery. Again, web link. If you want to read about it. VA.gov again has all this information on there. Bottom left-hand corner, all the dead benefits. Chapter 1606, we do see a lot of these. It pays a small stipend to the student while they're actively drilling. It's almost $400 a month, not to include any kickers, which I have to lose. So yeah, they go into VA. It's kind of confusing. They go, I'm not a veteran, what? So they go to VA.gov and apply for it, and they get a letter. And all of you that know Post-9/11, they still mail out letters. So you can stop doing that and figure out how to PDF stuff to people. Or you can pull it down. Anyway, so you get a letter in the mail. Yeah, it actually runs for $407 a month. So that goes again while they're actively drilling. They got a comment at the end of each month to say they're still actively drilling. FYI, Post-9/11 students have to actually text in at the end of each month to tell the VA they're still in school. That just happened last year, but I don't know why they do it, but it's all text. So we see quite a few of these. If you got a guard or a reserve around your close to your institution. How many folks here from higher ed? Okay. This one I want to talk about because I think there may be some of you who work with older veterans. I'm still making an assumption, but we're seeing this population is growing like crazy because if you do the math, our veterans, not even have to be our generation, but our young Iraq and Afghan veterans, gals who were in 2003, 4, 5, 6, right out, 100% disabled. They had young kids. Now guess what? Those kids are college age, so they're going to school now, or they're senior in high school. So we spend a lot of time talking to veterans. So I share with you this benefit. If you're working with a veteran and you know he or she's 100% disabled, say, do you know your family may have an education benefit? Because I get a call probably twice, 3 times a quarter from a veteran 100% disabled. I heard my kids can have this benefit. What do you tell them? They just know nothing about it. I think in the VA, I'm not 100% rated, but there's something hidden way down in there that says, hey, by the way, you may get dependence education assistance. They just don't pay attention to it. The kids are still in middle school, whatever. So huge population, like I said, has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. So, and the confusing part is the student has to go out and apply for it, not the mom or dad or the veteran. And the student needs to have mom or dad's social security number. So we have conversations about that with parents. A lot of times the parents do it for the kids, I think. But, and then the student, not a veteran, gets the letter that says, yes, it's your benefit. It's 36 months, it used to be 45, 36 months of benefits similar to the post 9/11. Pays a monthly stipend straight to the student. It's $12.98 when they're in school. Nothing comes to Eastern, nothing comes to your school. So it's the parent's obligation to pay tuition. It can be confusing. Usually ages out of 26, there's rules around that, and spouses usually from 15 years after the veteran was rated to 100%. So I just share that with you. If you're talking to veterans and you hear that they're 100%, ask them if they know about this benefit.
Yeah, I heard somebody was saying that if you already had your rating and everything, and if you thought that the child, you maybe only had one child and they were going to use the 4-year post 9/11, that if they were doing Running Start, you could use the Chapter 35 to pay for the books.
So Running Start's a program we do it at Eastern where the kids are still in high school. No, you cannot use this for Running Start. You're not admitted, you're not officially admitted student in the university. Usually you're not over 18, and usually you don't have high school diploma yet, which are requirements for it. So we had a question that the Running Start kids, because Running Start actually is free in most cases, but the parent goes, my kids got $300 worth of books.
We also have students that use the state waiver with
I'm
this.
going to talk about that in a minute. Which confuses me. Yeah.
So, someone else in service officer at Spokane County Veteran Services, also a work study site supervisor. One of my work studies, he's new as he started yet, but he's going to be utilizing his father's Chapter 30 or Chapter 35 benefits. And is he allowed to use that person in his post-9/11?
Great question, husband. So yes. So we are seeing also, because of just the timeline of veterans getting out and transferring benefits, the student, the dependent can have both of the benefits. They can have transfer Chapter 33 post 9/11 months and Chapter 35 benefits. And I've had detailed conversations with parents about, they always ask me, which one should we use first? And I said, well, it's a veteran decision. My kind of rule of thumb is no 18-year-old kid really knows what they want to major in and how far they want to go. But if you got aspirations of going to grad school, save that Chapter 33 benefit in your back pocket because it's going to pay off your tuition. Where the Chapter 35 is just giving you this $12.98 monthly stipend, and the rest is on you. So, and again, so parents have to kind of balance all that, and then the accumulation of months between how many 33 months they got and how many the cumulative 36 months with a DEA, and the cumulative both of them can be over, I think, 48. So lots of rules around it. There's ways to navigate. You can go one quarter with one benefit, change your mind and go one quarter and flip it to the other. It makes my office have headaches, but you can flip it around from even quarter to quarter. We usually don't see that, but you can flip it around. So any questions on this benefit? Problem?
If both parents are 100% disabled, can they get two entitlements or just one?
Great question. And yeah, we're seeing that too. So both transfer benefits if both parents transfer to the kid. They get both from both parents. And 35, the accumulation of the months from both top out at, I think, at 48. So they can use one parent. Usually the kid graduates and our ages out. But yes, you could use this benefit if both your parents happen to be 100% disabled. It happens. It's rare, but it happens. Okay, any questions on this? Now I'm going to talk waivers in a minute because it's a headache. Yes.
The spouses typically, what is that? Typically 15 years from the, what does that mean? It expires.
15 years from the rate of the, I could probably, you might be doing an example. 50, so Seth's wife has been coming to Eastern. So when he was rated 100% disabled and she applied for it 15 years from the date of your rate.
Is when it expires.
Yeah.
And I got rated in the old system, so it took 5 years for my claim to get approved. And so they backdated it to when I submitted the claim, so it was like 5 years of wasted benefits that didn't get used. So they do give you the allowance to select your date that you want your benefit to start. So the spouse can be a little tactical about the 15 years.
Same with the kids, we backdated some students a whole year that were Eastern students, and the parents only got rated, and they've got a huge lump sum of 1288 lump sum back orders. When they selected it now, dependents tactical where they are in their education plan. So I got a couple more minutes. Yeah. All right. VRE. Great benefits too. Duration, I mentioned yes. As you're getting ready to opt out, are you losing? Are you ready to age out or retire? VRE is an employment benefit. That link is on the website, on the VA.gov website. You have to meet with a VA counselor. You have to talk about employability, do some assessment testing. I don't know, Robin's. I know Robin. Well, she's VRE. Yeah. So if you're getting ready to lose, maybe you're 33. We have some students have a lot of 33, but they just want to go the VRE route, which is great. That's fine. Now, VRE is very strict, though. If they approve you for social work, BA in social work, and then halfway into the program, say, I don't really like social work, I want to be a history major. VRE counselor is probably employed. We didn't approve that. All right, so he said, I want to major in this. I want to get a minor. I want to get a couple minors. And the counselor doesn't approve it. So, rules, a little stricter for this one. Yes?
Have you heard of anybody, I know the VA just changed their rules about Chapter 33 months and then Readiness. Have you heard of anybody getting approved for the retroactive induction?
I just read, I have not had experience with that. We just had a webinar, we had training just a couple weeks ago about that. I have not seen anybody on my campus yet, so I have not had experience. Yeah, so they did change the rules about accumulation of months, if you use 33 and then anyway, it is, and maybe these two have experience with using VRE or working with VRE veterans. Last thing I'll talk about is these waivers, all right? If you're working with a veteran who is a Washington State resident, he ran out, let's say they've used all the benefits, they're old, the Montgomery's gone and all that, and they want to go back to school. If they're in a state school, 2 or 4 years, state school, the state provides as a form of financial aid, provides a 50% tuition waiver. So it cuts the tuition down. Must be honored with discharge, must be your first time undergrad degree, and there's a couple of rules around it. But great waiver. Yeah.
Do you know if they cover like welding school or any of those type of trade schools?
No, not that I'm aware of. This is an RCW state policy for the 2 and 4 year state schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's 100% to disabled. Right.
No, you don't have to be disabled here. You just have to be a veteran, honorably discharged. You're thinking of my next one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In the back.
Yeah, just to answer his question regarding welding schools and technical colleges.
Yeah.
The waiver will cover it all.
Oh, well, yes. Okay, cool.
Well, like Clover Tech, because you're a state school.
Yes, for technical college.
Because like I went to WVC for welding and VRE covered that.
Okay.
But I have other guys that are interested in that type of thing and I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, it'll cover pretty much everything. And dependent and spouse, whatever, will receive a dependent book stipend of roughly $166 for that quarter.
Okay, cool.
So.
Cool. I got a couple guys that are interested in getting mechanics.
Yeah, ask the institution you're going to.
Oh, yeah, we'll do.
I just know about the state 2 and 4 years.
Okay.
Good question?
So just for clarification, this only applies to state schools?
Yeah, your TOU, I know
Yes.
private schools do whatever the heck they want. No, it does not apply to private schools.
Just trying to.
Private schools don't have to, thank you for the point, great point. Private schools don't have to follow the state rules. Okay, then the other waiver that we're talking about, maybe what you were alluding to, is if we need to make a video or something. We spend a lot of time, and Seth sits down and Seth doesn't call me, thank goodness, because his daughter's square. If she goes to our school and uses this waiver. So I'm a young student, my dad's 100% disabled, I'm getting this Chapter 35 benefit, and it pays me straight in my pocket. Dad and I are both Washington State residents. All right, I'm working on my first time undergrad degree, so I can apply for this waiver. All right, parents is a form of Washington State financial aid. Nothing to do with VA. VA had no visibility on this. Don't even think to separate the two. All right, the kid gets all their tuition waived. Great deal, right? Yeah. Eastern, all the tuition and the course fees are paid. What we don't cover, there's some fuzzy rules in there. We don't cover the mandatory fees, which is about $380. So that's where it gets a little bit confusing with parents, like, what's going on here? Doesn't cover your housing if you're living in arrest halls, and it's a form of state financial aid. So guess what? Johnny has to keep the grades up. I can't tell how many phone calls I get from parents that suddenly, how come my son has this bill for tuition? Well, you looked at his grade lately or talked to Johnny? Because his grandson obviously pulled his waiver because he failed all the classes last quarter. And I go, oh, shock. I got a big bill. Because remember, the Chapter 35 benefits, these usually are tied together. I mean, usually the student has both, because there's the 35 and this waiver. So having this budget is all about mom and dad figuring out budgeting and how to get the kids to school. So the waiver's great. Again, we have some kids on 35 who aren't on this waiver because mom or dad separate the divorce in the family, and the veteran lives in another state. Won't work. Right? The veteran and the student have to be domiciled in Washington State. Which again, just for state schools. Again, I can't speak for the other schools we're talking about. All right, any questions on that? Then I'm going to pass it on to Peter next. Great website. Go to the GFL comparison tool. Anything, a welding school, anybody that's been approved by the VA processing education benefits, you'll find on this page. Just Google GFL comparison tool. That's Eastern's profile, and you'll see. Definitely go scroll down. You'll see complaints. I didn't put ours up here. But if you scroll down and say, yeah, people have been complaining about, the scuba diving school because they're stealing money. So if you're working with a veteran or thinking of going to school, just GFL comparison. It's a great tool. It's VA.gov. Don't put it on all these other third-party sites. This is the real deal. Run by the VA. Other resources to get transcripts. You can probably know about that. GFL covered for tutors and such, and all they'll help you get counseling and so forth. So any quick questions, we can say questions for them. I'm going to hand this off to Peter, and we'll go from there. That's a picture of me.
I do have a flyer for the scuba school. I'm Peter Levon. I'm the apprenticeship specialist for your Washington Department of Veterans Affairs. And really what I see my job as is I'm a navigator. All the stuff that Dave said about benefits, what you'll find, let's go to the next slide here. What you'll find with the apprenticeships is that there are, every one of the 180 apprenticeships that we have in Washington State and the 20 to 30 federal registered programs, they're all eligible for your GI Bill. On the state side, the big programs, we don't take your money. I used to be the guy that would bring you in for the labor chief. You can apply, you can use your basic housing allowance, you can pass it on to your kids, we don't care because we're not taking your money. So once you're accepted in, you're in, and we pay for it out of our trust funds. That's how the big programs pay for it. So, you guys already know she's been here for 2 days with the Washington Veterans. Veterans transitioning Washington. In the year or so, a little bit more that I've been in this position, I've mostly been working with JBLM because it's convenient, and with COVID, we weren't allowed to go anywhere, but I went to JBLM. And in JBLM, they let out about plus or minus 6,000 transitioning service members a year, and about 40 or 50% go home somewhere else. The rest of them stay here. So what do they do? What do they do for a career option? Accessing talent. How many in here have ever been in an apprenticeship program? A couple. How many in here have ever been in the military? You're in like the best apprenticeship program in the world. First day when you walk through that gate and they hand you a green or blue uniform, you had no idea what you were getting into. But they gave you basic training, they gave you advanced training, they gave you worked your way up through the ranks hopefully. And you stay with the career. That's the same model that we use in apprenticeship. If you're familiar with the Army, you have your squad. On construction, you have your crew. And when you come in, you're probably going to be in E1 or E2, and you're going to work, get training, advanced work and training, advanced work until you make journeyman status. But when you make journeyman status, you're probably going to be the foreman. You're going to be the squad leader. And then what do you do from there? Where do you want to go? You know, the options are pretty much endless. Industry need, you know, look at this room. How many people under 40 are in this room? There's an industry need to pass on what we know, to let people train up, get the education, and move on. Is that you? I don't know. I didn't see the final slide. Oh.
I think it's going through all those topics that you just started talking about.
Oh, okay. That's possible. Sorry, I didn't see the final slide. Anyway, for outreach, my territory is Washington State. I'm supposed to go to the bases. Like I said, JBL is getting the brunt of it. But Whidbey Island, Fairchild, Bangor was a Bangor one 2 days ago, 3 days ago. You know, doing outreach, letting people know. And technically my fence is Washington State, but if you have people that are transferring somewhere else, I don't care if they're going to North Carolina, Georgia, or Texas, and they need help, send them to me, and we will find a way to connect. Well, I don't know if there's a slide on here, but I have a handout. I have a table right straight out that door. And this is a handout that we put together basically a few years ago for the Washington Military Transition Council. And when I came in, I updated it and got it. I apologize if you recite, because it's kind of Western Washington centric with the contact information, but I could help you with that. Or you can look on the Labor and Industries lni.wa.gov website, and it will give you every one of the 180 apprenticeships. The big dogs in apprenticeship are construction. There's about 25 programs. They're 85% of the apprenticeship in the state. And you hear on the federal level from President Obama and coming this way, everybody wants to do apprenticeship. Well, they want to start new apprenticeships. Well, the big apprenticeships, the biggest apprenticeship in the state of Washington is the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the electrician. They've got 2,500 apprentices. The laborers and carpenters have 1,400 each. When you start a new program, there's big startup costs, and if you're only servicing 5 people, there's a great cost barrier to starting a new program. But if you don't want to do construction, if you want to turn people's hair purple, there's an apprenticeship for that. It's called cosmetology. So you can look that up. There's on the Labor and Industries website, like I said, you can look up every one of the 180 apprenticeships. You can sort them by name of program. You can sort them by geographic location, and find what you want to do. This list that I have on here of different apprenticeships, I've only got 12 of the 180. But if we're building this building, everybody on this list touches this building at some point. So it's like different MOSs in the service. What do you want to do? You want to be an electrician, laborer, carpenter, iron worker, sheet metal, tile setter. What do you want to do? Oh, let's see. Have you hired vets? How do you access? I would say that's more an employer type question. And we're working on the possibility of more employer outreach. I refer people to the ESD office, especially at JBLM. I refer companies to them, so that they can post their jobs. Because a lot of the companies on the outside, they don't realize that they can post on there. And they can check the box for veteran hiring preference. And a lot of people will search by that mode. One question that came up, did issues arise? In Labor and Industries in Washington State, right now there are in the apprenticeship part, there's about 20,000 apprentices statewide. And it's run this way for years, about 10% are veterans. So I have in the past, I covered Bangor area and I covered Florida's McCord area. So I hired a lot of veterans in the labor's apprenticeship program. And I've had issues with like some of the other classes are with PTSD, people coming in and having that. One of the issues when I hear people when they're on disability, if I'm interviewing somebody, I will ask that, and I'll try not to be too personal. But some of these programs on here, it's like trying out for the sea homes. I mean, it's very physically demanding. I had the command sergeant major of First Corps apply. Said, I've heard your spiel for 2 years. I think you have a good program. I'd like to give it a shot. He was retiring. He called me on Wednesday night. We had a 1-week basic training physical assessment. And he said, Pete, I'm not going to make it. I said, what do you mean you're not going to make it, Sergeant Major? I got it. But he had a back issue, and it's not worth hurting yourself. There are other programs on here that are less physically demanding. So that's something to watch, who you're referring to, which program. The electricians, like I said, the one that I get asked for most is JBLM is electrician. They have a 9-month waiting list to take the test to maybe get into their program. So if you have somebody that's getting out Friday and going to be homeless on Monday, that may not be the way that you want to send them. Yeah, this is my thing, no job, no apprentices. People say, oh, we want to put them in the apprenticeship, we want to put them in the apprenticeship. If I don't have a job to put them in, they're not an apprentice. So you kind of have to gauge what's out there, what availability there are jobs. And if somebody in here can help me, one thing that I haven't figured out yet is the air gap between when a service member gets out and when there's actually an opening in an apprenticeship. Sometimes on the apprenticeship side, we can be proactive and pre-test and gather the paperwork and have them ready. I tried to do that. I had them give me a call a couple of weeks before they walked out the gate. And I would get them on the list, so that hopefully when they walk out, I can get them going pretty quickly. But it doesn't, if you have somebody that wants to get in and it's October, November, December, forget it. It's not going to happen on construction until April, May. They'll start ramping up again. If they need an everyday job, construction may not be for them. They may have an everyday job, but it depends on the company and the economy and what jobs they get. Usually most of the construction industry, a person, if they're not working, they go into I'll say union hall. There's non-union programs too, but union hall. They go in, they sign up, they're waiting for that phone call to come from a contractor, and then they're sent out to work. Last time I got dispatched out of the union hall was 1987, but I had a specialty that people wanted, and I did this time. I worked all the time, and they can work up to those positions. The Washington Construction Center of Excellence, that's Rent Technical College. They do a lot of work with apprenticeship. They're kind of a central clearinghouse on this economic, industry, education, and workforce supply and demand. Current needs. I'm working with companies, not necessarily always in apprenticeship, and a couple months ago I talked with one of the recruiters from Boeing. They want everybody from the shop floor to the boardroom. And you're talking about the educational benefits. Boeing has changed their educational benefits. If you work for them for 30 days and you're a full-time employee, they will give you educational benefits. They'll pay for you to go to college and get your bachelor's. They'll just pay for it all. So good options out there. Do you guys, any questions that are coming up here, please stick your hand up. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had a question about, I know that there's been a lot of references to like use of the GI Bill and those benefits, but I have a lot of veterans in HUD-VASH who may have exhausted their benefits or may be ineligible because of discharge status, and I was kind of curious what options they had.
I can't speak for all the programs like hospitality. On the construction side, basically we wouldn't take your GI Bill. You can, if you are GI Bill eligible, you can use it for basic housing allowance. They'll give you, I think, an E5 rate to do that, and then it diminishes as you go up in wages. But,
and your discharge status doesn't?
Mostly not. We're fairly flexible. I can remember that I took in 3 people with dishonorable discharges. 1 was successful and 2 weren't. So there's reasons, but no, we're, and on the building trade side, we're all about second chances. The person makes a mistake, you made a mistake, put it behind you, and let's move forward. And I think most of the trade, I know the ironworkers, carpenters, and laborers are all that way. The electricians, I said that's when I get asked for the most. There is a math standard that you have to meet, but while you're in or in that last 6 months, USO and Goodwill Industries, at least around the JBLM area, they offer some training classes that you can take to upgrade your math skills. There was one of the classes yesterday that they talked about incarcerated veterans. We have programs at a couple of the jails, I guess, or prisons, and people can work through that, and when they come out, they can have direct entry into a program. So that can be a good option for them too. What we need to do, I think I pretty well told you. Basically, go on the Labor and Industries website, find something you would like to do, and then contact somebody. Well, that's me. It's a great opportunity. Me, I didn't have military time. I was damaged goods. So I thought, what am I going to do to pay for school now? I got in construction. It did pay for school. I got a couple of degrees. But when I got my first degree, I thought, I don't want to go sit in that cubicle every day for the rest of my life. So I stuck on the outside. I'm a road builder. I've done, miles and miles of I-5, Highway 12, 512, all over the place. Countless parking lots. I've done 15 projects in the Fort Lewis. And it's been a great life. Employees are paid for, everything's paid for. And I'm doing this because I got asked. No, it can be a great life for the right person, but it's not for everybody. I had one guy work for me that was a Navy chief, and he was a retiree. And his deal when he came to me, he said, here's the deal, I don't want to supervise anybody, and I don't want to be in charge. And he was great. He's an awesome guy. So, if they like to be outside, if they like to be physical, I heard somebody say something about welding in the other one. Welding is cool in your box. There is not a specific welding apprenticeship, but if you're eligible, if you're talking to transitioning service members in that last 6 months, the JBLM, the pipe fitters, the Veterans and Piping Program, they can go take their program. They're like the premier welding program. It's 18 weeks. They certify you and a bunch of different things. And what do? They weld anywhere from hospital gas to nuclear power plant. So if that's what you want to do, that's a heck of a good place to start. But iron workers well, electricians well, laborers well. So welding's a tool. I will tell you, if they're in that, especially in the transition period, if they're eligible to take advantage of any of the career skills or skill bridge programs, do it. Because every certification you have in your pocket is going to be money in your pocket somewhere down the road. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
CDL, is that a definition, or is that the training, or?
See, I recommend CDL. You can do that in that last 6 months before you get out. Usually on the trade side, we think of CDL as Teamsters. The Teamsters have a training program over at Tri-Cities. They only have about 12 or 15 apprentices statewide. That's ridiculous. There's tons of driving opportunity. I was a construction craft laborer. I was not a truck driver, but now the state keeps changing the laws and rationing it down. If you drive a 1-ton truck and tow a little trailer behind it, you have to have CDL. So CDL is always good to have in your pocket. There is some limitations, and if there's two schools at JBLM, CDS, Commercial Driver School, Insurance and Transport. Either one will help you with job placement when you get done. It's a good way to start. even if you want to be in management, if you're with a logistics firm, a lot of times on the application they'll require that you have a CDL. You're not driving, but you're supervising people that are drivers, and they want you to have a CDL. So that's another thing you can tell your people when they go to do. We all tell them resume and DD 214, take their combined services transcript with them. Because sometimes there's classes that you take in the military that I or another apprenticeship coordinator could give you direct credit for. And that's one thing most people don't hear. So if they get direct credit for a class, that can advance them in standing in the apprenticeship. So they have a shorter time till they get it. And this flyer right here, I give contacts for the dozen or so top ones, and I also give a dollar value on them. That's your entry level wage, so that's the lowest you'll make. And with these, there's no unpaid internships. When you go to work for these guys, you're getting paid. So it's earned while you learn, the original 4-year degree, that kind of thing. Anything else? I'll leave you alone.
Can I just have one thing that I took a link earlier for that GFO comparison tool. Great tool for things like a CDL, because if you just typed in a zip code or Spokane and you could put in qualifiers like trucking, it'll pop up everybody out there that takes the GI Bill. And you can look at all of them, because I've had a student or two that's just 4-year schooling for them, if they want to be linemen or truck drivers. So GFO comparison tool can tie into some of the things that Peter talked about if they need to have some support to pay for licenses.
There's one note I put on my list. If you're looking, or a student or your service member comes and talks about, oh, this company has an apprenticeship program. If they're not a state or federally registered program, they're homeschooled. The FedEx lady, she does not like me. I'm set up by her at JPLM, and she's talking to all these people about their apprenticeship. And so I asked her, are you state or federally registered? Well, no, we do it ourselves. So I told her, well, you're homeschooled. The idea of having a state or federally registered program is you have a credential when you get done that you can go anywhere and you can say, hey, I'm certified at this, or I'm registered with this. And so watch out, because you'll get, in Washington State, on state projects, we have over $1 million. We have a requirement for apprenticeship utilization. So you'll get a company, and they'll sign all the paperwork. Oh yeah, they're gonna do apprenticeship. Well, they're doing their own. Well, no, it has to be state registered or federally registered. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Hello, everybody. I'm Seth Mayer. I am the Veterans and Military Families Program Operator for Washington State Employment Security Department. My program that I operate and receive funding for funds about 45 staff across the state in our workforce offices where you may engage with them. We've got DevOps. We've got a DevOps here in the room. We've got local veteran employment representatives, and we have consolidated veteran service representatives. So it's 3 different positions that are out there. Located in more than, we've got more than 60 workforce offices in the state, and we've got most of those covered. Stuff that I'm talking about today, Dave talked about the education side, using your GI Bill benefits. Peter was talking about the apprenticeship pathway. So I wanted to share the non-traditional pathway to some training that's available to anybody. Well, let me back up here, just go over the agenda real quick. Just give you a little background about WorkSource, who we are. I'm going to be talking about those training solutions I just mentioned, and then the call the clicks and the bricks. We do have virtual services, and we do have in-person services, and I want to describe what they are. So, WorkSource, we have over 60 locations throughout the state. We're the American Job Center. Every state across the United States have these American Job Centers. They call them different things. In Washington State, we call it WorkSource. We're the employment center for all those job seekers, but we're also an employment solution for the businesses that are looking for talent. We serve both of those customers. Now, most of the people who walk into a WorkSource office will call it the unemployment office. It's just the opposite of the unemployment office. We're the employment office now. So So anyway, I just wanted to share that a little bit about us. But big thing I'm going to talk about today is we're going to go around this wheel here about these are all these different training solutions that we have that are available to individuals who come into a WorkSource office. Now, I thought Dave was going to talk about the Fafsa, but he didn't talk about it, so I'll talk about it a little bit. But it doesn't matter, military background, civilian background, you're youth, you're a non-traditional worker that's changing careers. If you don't have any undergraduate level degree at all, 100% of the time, individuals should apply for the free application for federal student aid. This is the basic financial aid paperwork package that everyone fills out. I see a lot of heads nodding here because I'm guessing a lot of people in this room have gone to college, university, and probably filled this thing out. So it is comprised of a couple of things. There's grants that are part of it. There's a Pell Grant, there's state need grants. This is free money. Grant money you don't ever have to pay back. So as long as you are maintaining a C-level average in your classes, that grant money is yours to pay for tuition, pay for books, pay for your living expenses. Nobody's going to ask for that money back unless you fail your classes, of course. And then there's student loans. And a loan is a loan, and you're going to have to pay that loan back. And it's one of those loans that not necessarily protected by bankruptcy. So if you get that student loan, there's a good chance that you're going to have to pay that back. Biden just signed that new law for the tuition reimbursement and tuition relief program. I'm not familiar with it at all. It's too brand new. We don't get dive into it, so I won't be able to answer any questions on that side of it. But there's two types of loans. There's a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan. And the difference between those is that when you're going to school and you're in the classroom, the subsidized loan, it means the federal government is waiving your interest that's being compounded. So it's interest-free while you're in school, but you're still going to have to pay it back. And as soon as you're out of school, the interest starts and it starts to compound. Where that unsubsidized loan is, you're getting charged interest right away from day one. That interest is compounding, and pretty soon you're paying interest on interest on interest, and so on and so forth. So that's what, but because of that Pell Grant money, that's free money, everyone should apply for it. And most financial aid offices are pretty slick that if you just complete the FAFSA, depending on your need, how much financial need you have, they're automatically going to consider you for a lot of different scholarships that college or that university has. So my daughter's in the music program, for example, at Eastern Washington University, and she applied for FAFSA, didn't get any grants or anything like that, but because she was in the music program, she was automatically eligible for a $400 scholarship that helped pay for her books. She didn't have to submit any scholarship paperwork at all. The financial aid department basically did it and said, this is your reward. So there's an education benefit there. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because you can come into a WorkSource office and we can help you fill out this paperwork. Sometimes going to college and university, it's a busy place. There might be one or two people on that campus that's available to all those thousands of students who are asking the same question. And on a walk-in-the-door basis, you can come in and sit down with one of our staff and we can explore the FAFSA and help you complete that. So that's why I bring that up.
Real quick, if you are doing this for your kids, and you're thinking about loans, Parent Plus loans are not going to be repaid by student loan repayment if your kid joins the military. So if you think your kid's going to join the military, don't do a Parent Plus loan. That won't be eligible for student loan repayment, but their student loans, they can still get it.
Thank you. I wasn't familiar with that. So, the VA education entitlements, Dave did a wonderful job going over that. Question in the back?
So folks that apply for the financial aid or are eligible for like the GI Bill, that's great, it's awesome, they're going to be able to go to school. But there's a lot of folks, whether they're the vets or their families, that have no idea what they want to go to school for. Does WorkSource do any sort of assessments with people to help them figure out the best pathway?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm going to go through the wheel here, and then I've got some case studies to kind of describe like what this person coming to the door and the assessments and things like that's a part of what we're doing as well. Okay?
With the FAFSA, is it just Washington State WorkSource that assists, or are all the American Job Centers trained to do that? Just so when we're talking to like the military folks at outreach event, we
Every
can say,
American job center
okay.
should be familiar with this
Yeah.
benefit to help offer a direction for education. and training
Okay,
for anyone who
so
wants.
when, if they PCS, then they can go to a Texas Workforce or AGC.
Like I said, the VA education entitlement, I'm not going to bore you with that because Dave nailed it. So, but I will talk a little bit more about the VA Readiness and Employment Program. Dave did touch on that. We're the workforce program. The American job centers across the United States are inherently in with the Veteran Readiness and Employment Program. Oftentimes, as someone who applies for the VRE program, they don't know what they want to be yet when they grow up. They just know that they've got a significant injury and it's preventing them from being able to do the work that they did in the military previously, and they can't do that civilian equivalent work anymore. So they need to be retrained. The VA recognizes that they have an injury that is impacting their ability to be employed. So the VRE does a few different things, but one of the things they'll do is they'll retrain that person. And they'll pay 100% of the tuition. The fees, the mandatory fees, the waiver doesn't cover, the books, the VRE system, if your education is pretty knowledgeable, you're going to need a computer to do your schoolwork, there's a computer package that's offered. If you're a PC person versus Apple person, they're pretty good at accommodating your flavor. A printer, ink for the printer, and paper for the printer. When the ink and paper run out of ink and paper, you can call and order some more ink and paper. You get a stipend in the bookstore, so a lot of us vets with these brain injuries, we forget about stuff all the time, including my book bag with all my pens and stuff, and the class is about to start. I can go in the bookstore, get my little tab of paper and a pencil, and it's automatically charged to the VRE program. So VRE pays for everything. Now, David mentioned a lot of rules. Talk about Big Brother looking over your shoulder and how you're doing. You can't take a single class that's outside of that program. It's not contributing to you finishing that degree. It's not approved. If you decide that you don't want to be the widget maker anymore and you want to try a different route, you're going to have to go through the VRE program and be reassessed all over again to determine if that vocational goal will fit with your injury. And then when you finally finish education, well, let me back up a little bit, because as they're assessing you and they're like trying to figure out what are you a good fit for, what are your interests in, they'll often send you to the workforce office to do some labor market research. So this is part of your question here. And so we do have some assessments that measure learning style, whether they're a visual learner, auditory learner, or kinesthetic learner, because that can definitely guide somebody on what would be the most appropriate education and training pathway for them. We can also do an interest inventory based on, what are the things you like working indoors? Do you like working outdoors? Like, you didn't want to work in a cubicle, so I know how you would answer that question. And that eliminated a lot of different occupations that you wouldn't have an interest in. So this VRE program can actually, through those assessments, kind of come up with a nice list of occupations you could be a good fit for. We can do the labor market information. We can look at this from the national level. How much does this occupation earn nationally? But we can go a little bit smaller. We can look at how does this occupation perform in the state of Washington? And then we can scroll down a little bit further and go, how does this occupation fit in this county? So if you're like, I'm handcuffed to Spokane County because I own a home and all my family are there, I'm not moving anywhere else. I went through these assessments. I found 4 different occupations that are a good fit for me. 3 of them are only going to experience a 2% growth in the next 5 years, but one of them is going to experience a 20% growth in the next 5 years. That tells me if I'm going to go invest my time in education and training 4 or 5 years from now, there's a job waiting for me at the end of it. So we can be strategic and help that student find the guy that we're talking about that. Moving on, VA work study. You didn't get a chance to talk about it.
Yeah, you're right. But
go ahead.
On the VRE, you're also when the student graduates, don't you have a period of time after the graduation period?
I think, yeah, I'm pretty good.
I know there's a couple of, for like 6 months, they're still under the VRE.
So when they do complete their VRE program, they're actually entitled to actually a couple more months of their living stipend. So there's this transition period from when they finish school to when they can get that job. So there's a little bit of livelihood there. But that stipend money is really based on their ability to pursue employment. And so what the Voc Rehab counselor will do, will assign that veteran to one of my DBOPs at the workforce offices throughout the state of Washington. so we can assist that person to meet their educational goal. All while at the same time, less investigators or any other barriers that you're experiencing. Like, you might have a kid and you're not sure how childcare is going to work, you're not sure how you're going to be able to afford that. And as you'll see, we're going to have a lot of different programs that we can piggyback on to help that customer meet their employment goals. So anyways, VRE, they finish, they work with us, they get a couple more months of stipend benefits. Again, you know, are they going through the resume workshop? Are they actually looking for jobs? Those things are what essentially gets them paid for the VRE for those last 2 months. So there is a transition there. Also, if the occupation that you're going into requires tools, as a minimum requirement for you to be in this job, the VRE system will buy those tools too. So I've got some examples here, but I don't want to steal my thunder ahead of me though. The VA work study allowance, they have to be 3/4 time rate?
You have to be more than half time. Well, it tiers down, it's state minimum wage. They have to be using their GI Bill or educational benefits while they're going to school. They can then go to a site. We have five employees that do VA work study. I don't want to clear your thunder on this one. So, and it's non-taxable income. All right, Washington state minimum wage, paid directly from the VA to the students. I will put a plug in. If you're an agency out there that doesn't have VA work study students, and your site's never applied to use VA work study students, I would suggest you go to look at the work study student program, and you can apply with the VA to get on their list. And if you do anything in and around veterans, like Seth's office does, we definitely do, you can hire VA work study that doesn't come out of your own budget. And again, they have to be going to school. So we get phone calls like, hey, John's working at the cemetery in Medical Lake, and you haven't certified his benefits yet. So they can't be working VA work study when they're not in school. So summertime.
Right.
If they're not going to summer school, they're not on VA work study. So there's lots of rules around it. Go ahead for the rest. But if your site's not on it or thinking about it, like if you meet the rules and it's great labor, they got to be using the GI Bill, but it's not money out of your pocket.
And real quick, it's considered an education benefit, not income, as he said. So it also doesn't count against any other eligibility for other programs and benefits.
Non-reportable.
So it's, even though it's like, what, 12, what is it in Washington State?
State minimum wage.
State minimum wage.
Right, but ours is what, 12.95 or something. I'm not sure what our state minimum wage is. 15 now, so, but that's all tax free. It's.
And it's state minimum wage in Idaho. So Idaho state minimum wage, because we're from Spokane, we're a border city, so we get those students that are going to Idaho schools, but they're coming to Washington to do a work study job. They'll still get paid a lot more money. Hand in the back, sir.
I just wanted to add something. I'm a site supervisor for the work study program. So if you're setting one up since COVID has started, they changed the rules. You have to go, you now have to register, okay, through SVA, and then log on. You can't do it like you did prior to COVID just by getting in touch with the VA. You got to go through that process through SVA.
Yeah, we all love SVA, don't we?
Yeah, don't we? So, bottom line is, just getting in there could be a significant nightmare. You'll need a CAD card, a PIN card, ID, DS log on, just to basically start the process. But as they mentioned, it's worth every benefit. And basically, yes, 100% correct. The payment is whatever that state's minimum wage is.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I got to tell you, if your organization, sometimes it's hard to find new talent to come into your organization, someone that's going to earn their keep and do it. Work studies are like, it's a working interview. You know, that they're working and they're working with your organization, and you got to find out, you know, are they going to, is this someone I want to hang out with 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? Because I got to tell you, here at our work source, we hired a lot of our work studies, and they've rebounded and had a career in state employment. And one in particular didn't even finish their education. They quit going to school so they could take the job that in a work study position. So it is a source of talent for your organization to consider for new employees that you may want to offer an opportunity later down the road.
And if I could highlight Robin's hiding in the back there. Robin, she's got her Eastern truck. She was a VA work study. And now she's my vet board. Eastern grad. So yeah, and maybe we'll hire on to be the provost and stuff.
I was actually an Eastern student as well. And I got an email from you during COVID saying that Spokane County was looking for work.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that's how I got hired.
Yeah, there's sites all over the place. You need to just, you had a question for that?
Yeah, well, just one last thing. Another success story is that our director at the Washington Department of Veterans Affairs started their work study.
Yeah. Alfie was?
Yeah. All right, moving on. We're about halfway through the wheel here. Washington Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. This is for individuals that are workers that desire to have disabilities. Now, the VRE program, that is going to be specific to the injuries incurred from military service. The Washington DVR program would be for any other type of injury. You know, so if they walked in front of the bus and got smucked, and they can't ever have the mobility they had before walking in front of that bus, and that's going to greatly impact their ability to find employment. We're not going to be sending them to the VRE system. We're going to be looking for DVR for that support. And that can be access to training resources, accommodation resources. Someone might need a special device. I've got individuals with brain injuries that weren't incurred from military service, but were incurred from a car accident. And the DVR system has this kind of antiquated PDF system that can track stuff for them and helps them stay organized. So they help with that. They help with the employers and advocacy for the employers, especially on the reasonable accommodation side of the house. If that accommodation need has a high expense to it, DVR might be able to throw some money to that employer to save that person's job so they can perform the job with that accommodation in place. Commissioner approved training. This is if individuals are currently receiving unemployment insurance benefits and they want to go to school. Typically, if you're going to school, if you're receiving unemployment benefit, your agreement is you're looking for full-time employment, at least 3 jobs a week, right? But you want to go to school, well, you're no longer looking for full-time employment. Typically, unemployment would end. However, if the training that you're pursuing is going towards an in-demand occupation in our state, let's say a registered nurse, for example, but you definitely need of those, right? And that is that person's educational pursuit. The Commissioner Approved Training Program can approve them to pursue that education and continue to collect and exhaust their unemployment benefits. Yes, sir.
Seth, can I speak to this a little bit? I'm Clayton Haycraft out of WorkSource JBLM. We don't touch this a whole lot at JBLM. This was my bread and butter at Pierce. CAT is specifically for training that's about 8 to 12 weeks in length. So it's not going to be for traditional education. And then combined in that is what we call the training benefits program. There is a CAT application in TB. TB is necessarily for training programs that are a little bit longer in length, usually about a year. But if you can demonstrate and prove in documentation that you can get through that program within about 15 to 18 months, I've seen people get their associates, but it's a lot more argumentation. So it's not for traditional schooling, but it is for a training program, like you said, in demand.
Right, in demand. And as he's mentioned, short term is the target because they are on unemployment benefits and want them to go back to work as quickly as possible. So, yes, Peter.
That's another benefit in apprenticeship. All the major programs are commissioner approved training. So what you do, you get accepted, you work for a contractor, you're getting paid, but you have to go to school usually for 2 weeks every 1,000 hours. You can get your unemployment benefits during that 2 weeks. Maybe you have that initial waiting week, but you can get set up. But there's a place to sign on there that it's commissioner approved training. So you don't have that gap. Oh God, I don't have a check for 2 weeks. Anyway, forgot about that. That's great.
It's so much of our education, training, apprenticeships that weave together, coming time. The next one here is the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. There's a couple different funding sources there, the adult, the dislocated worker, and the youth programs, and I want to talk about all 3. And for the veteran, almost across the board, anyone who's pursuing employment or looking for better employment, maybe they're underemployed and they want to try to get into a better position, maybe a small certificate or something like that, especially in the IT industry, the 8+ certification or something like that can immediately get someone to be employable even though they've already got an IT associate's degree. Those certifications are requirements to the job, and they don't have the funding or the ability to pay for that training. So the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act adult program can certainly pay for something like that. The military spouse, for example, who is uprooted from their home when new duty orders are issued, and they have to quit their job and they have to move to a new location, and what they were doing in their old home doesn't really apply to the culture and the environment of the new place where they're living, and they might need some training for that. Well, they're considered a dislocated worker. So the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act has a dislocated worker program that can help with short-term training, even on-the-job training. You know, that's a great benefit. Learn on the job, and I've always loved on-the-job training because it's a working interview at the same time. You get to show that you can be a contributing member of the culture of that company, and it's somebody that you want to work with for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's a great opportunity for that. And then there is a youth program. We run into a lot of veterans who are like, I'm done working, I'm not interested. And I'm like, you got kids, right? So they want a job. And some of those kids aren't doing great in school. Some, 20 years of deployments. Those kids who have from broken homes, who were now forced into a single family household, the emotional struggles that come with that, the pressures in high school and stuff, and our youth are not finishing school for whatever reason. Not all of them, of course, but there is a contingent of youth that are not finishing school. As a parent, we want our kids to do well, right? And we understand that school isn't necessary for everyone. Honestly, I think that's more of a learning style issue than the fact that they're not intelligent enough to be successful in school. It isn't about that, because they're intelligent. But there are youth programs, the Job Corps program, which is a spin-off of the apprenticeship program. There's like Youth Build, and local communities will have these kind of encouragement to try to work with these at-risk youth who have dropped out of school to help them get their GED completed. So there's money there to help our youth as well, who are struggling with the education and hopefully pursue to a good employment. Yes, ma'am.
So what's the age of the youth program?
I
Where does it
believe
start?
the youngest 15 and up to 19, I believe. Like the Job Corps program, I think it's up all the way up to 19.
I think the youth goes up to 24.
24. I got the experts back there.
It's 16 to 24.
16.
Worker retraining, if anyone is receiving unemployment benefits, or maybe they haven't even applied for unemployment. I don't even want to mess with them, I'm not even going to apply for it, but they were technically eligible for unemployment benefits. There is a funding source through worker retraining that can actually contribute to short-term training for those individuals. If someone lost their job because of foreign competition, the main operations of the company, that the whole plant shuts down because they're going to ship to Mexico, or maybe it could even be the corporate office is switching to a different country and they're doing a reorganization. No matter what, someone lost their job because of something that's related to foreign competition. And if that person who lost their job has been in that company for a really long time, they probably haven't been able to learn new skills. Yeah, I was kind of just painting pictures. The old secretary that's using the carbon printer typewriter. Nobody uses those anymore. That secretary loses her job due to foreign competition. And for her to be able to apply for another secretarial position, she needs to know how to use the desktop computer, right? So something like this could actually take that person and retrain them in that skill and get them back to being employable. The Trade Adjustment Assistance Program, I've seen this pay as high as bachelor level degrees. So, especially if someone had started education and never were able to complete it, those are really good targeted individuals that help out with that. And then the last one here, basic food employment training, we call it BFET for short. Other states call it different stuff, but the program exists everywhere in the United States. If someone's at least receiving $1 a month in basic food assistance, this makes them eligible for this, which can help pay for some short-term training, can help pay for books. It has fuel stipend money to it, so to help a person get to the school and campus and put petrol in their car. And when I say $1 a month, is because I've encouraged veterans to apply for basic food, and they were offended that they only got $1 a month. Like, this was such a waste of my time that I only got $1 a month. This is so worthless. And I'm like, yeah, but now I can pay your $500 for the school books. You know, it's getting paid for now, so it was worth it. Yeah, Charlie.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention too, and it's not that you were suggesting anything otherwise, but a lot of these are also overlapping. So there's some services where they could double dip in certain things.
Yeah, I'm gonna dive right into that next.
I wanted to throw one other thing out. Along with that, there's a lot of complementary service that the state's always trying. We're starting out, so right now we've got like a pilot program for the Grow with Google scholarships, and all they need to do is create an account with us and get started with it. It's usually a $50 a month thing, but they're in high demand fields like IT, project management, and stuff like that. So, I mean,
yeah, and different local workforces will have opportunities, unique opportunities that are local to their community. Someone mentioned CDL. We had local CDL training where 100% of everything was paid for. They only had to pay like a $50 fee for a physical. That's the only thing they had to contribute, and everything else would be paid for them. That was specific to one work source. So, you know, different work sources based on the economic needs of the businesses in that community might have training programs like that to try to adjust new talent in there. So I got the wheel back up here again, and I want to tell you a story about a veteran that's coming to WorkSource. Isn't sure what they want to do when they grow up. They just released from the military transition. They didn't like what they did in the military at all. Plus, the job that they had in the military doesn't even directly apply to what they can do on the civilian side. So we assisted that customer doing those assessments, find out what type of learning style they were, where their interests lied at. This person had a high mathematical skill and a high interest in science, and it actually leaned towards an engineering education for this person. And the labor market research showed that anywhere in this tri-state area, the minimum starting occupational wage in that industry was $35 an hour. So this definitely struck this veteran's interest. We assisted that veteran with applying for Fafsa. We got their educational entitlements through their post-9/11 GI Bill. Because we were a WorkSource office and we needed a work study, we gave them a quick pitch on our work study program and we hired him. That veteran was receiving commission recruit training, or was receiving unemployment insurance. The program that they were going into, but there was a pre-preparation course for it. Commission recruit training approved it, so he was able to collect their unemployment compensation benefit. And then while talking to him, I convinced him to apply for basic food employment training. He's one of those guys that got $1 a month in benefits, but I got to pay for all of his school books with that funding source. So as Charlie was mentioning, there we're stacking these resources. We're going to try and leverage every single resource we can to help that customer not have a financial worry about how they're going to meet that employment goal or that educational goal, but give them as much support as we can. Another example, got a military spouse who just transitioned due to military orders, but right before the orders were issued, that military spouse lost their job to that foreign competition situation. So when they received orders, she said, well, I lost my job, I guess it's a great time to receive orders because I was going to have to quit my job anyways. Moves to the new area, comes into the WorkSource office and explains what's going on. She's interested in some education, but she wants education that will be transferable. The military serving spouse is likely going to spend a career in there. They understand that they're going to be hopping at different bases throughout that career. So she really wants to think on the front end here and get an occupation that will be transferable to different areas. So when she does have to pull chocks and move to a new location, she's got something she can land on and get immediately back into employment. So helping this spouse out, we helped her out with that FAFSA. She was a dislocated worker, so we were able to get her enrolled in the WIO dislocated worker program. She did lose her job technically due to foreign competition, so the Trade Adjustment Act came into play. And she was low enough to apply for that apply for it anyways. We're just gonna tell you no, right? And if you get that $1, there's a bunch of your books that are paid for, you know? And she ended up getting a degree, an IT certificate. It was a very short-term certificate, but with the dislocated worker program, we're actually able to pay for those industry-specific required certificates on top of that. And we were able to arrange an OJT, on-the-job training opportunity, where she worked on-site with an employer. Our agency paid half that wage, the customer's wages, so the employer only had to pay half the wages, all the way up to the training period, to the point where that employer had to make a decision on whether they're going to keep her or not, and they did, of course. And she was employed, she got a job, and it was a transferable occupation. Now, it didn't matter where she moved to, that she was going to be able to use that. It was cybersecurity, as a matter of fact. The last example I've got, I have a veteran who's been out of the military for 20 years. He comes down to me and he's like, this is my last chance. I've tried doing everything on my own, and I finally succumbed to the level where I have to come to the workforce office to ask for help. And this is an honest assessment. Sometimes people feel like this is like a sign of failure, the fact that I had to come into the workforce office. And honestly, I wish this veteran would have came in 15 years earlier, because he explained that he hadn't been able to hold on to a job for longer than about 2 or 3 weeks. He's able to get jobs, he's a skilled welder. He actually took 2 aluminum soda cans filled with soda and welded them together, and not a drop of liquid fell out of the can. That aluminum was super thin, and I was impressed. The guy knew how to weld. He was having some physical injuries and didn't think he could be able to do this because he's all in these funky positions doing weld tax and stuff. But he says, I can't keep a job for longer than 2 or 3 weeks. And I go, well, what's going on? He goes, well, you know, I was a sergeant major, man. I don't like these young kids coming up here telling me what to do. You know, they're kids. They never even served their country. And I said, well, what is that like? Are they like talking smack about your work? And he's like, no, they always walk up behind me. And then that kind of raised a red flag for me. I said, well, were you deployed? He goes, yeah, 6 deployments. I go, you ever in a firefight? He goes, oh yeah. Any explosions? Yep. 2 of my vehicles that blew up on me. Are you service connected? No, I don't need that. Those veterans out there need it more than me. You know? And some of you are shaking your head because you know how this narrative follows, right? They don't get that they earned the benefit, you know, so we got to convince them this, right? Sure enough, get the veteran to apply. He's diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. He's had several traumatic brain injuries. It made sense of why people were walking up behind him and he'd have such a reaction that it was involuntary. He didn't know anything about post-traumatic stress. So we got him rated, and we got him into the VRE program. And this was about a year-long window working with this person, because it took some time to one, they had to trust me to let's go to the VA system and let's get you enrolled in health care, and there's a bunch of hoops to jump through, but finally get him through the VRE program, and based on their assessment and his skills as a welder, they sent him to an apprenticeship for an underwater welding school. Number one, nobody was ever going to walk up behind him. Surprise him underwater. It's a total independent occupation. I mean, he works with the team, but nobody's going to walk up behind him. He's left alone. He just wants to be left alone to do his job, and he let him concentrate on this. And he finishes the school program, and when I'm helping this person get a job, we find an employment opportunity in Texas where the hurricane had gone through and blew up a bunch of bridges, so he's going to be spending the next 20 years fixing bridges in Texas, right? However, it was required that he have all his own tools and his own dive equipment to be eligible for the job. I didn't know this, but those dry suit helmets, you don't buy those off the shelf at Walmart. They're molded to a head. So you had to go to a facility to have a complete 3D scan of his head so that the helmet would fit his head perfectly. And once that helmet is made, it won't fit anybody else. That helmet by itself was $60,000. VA paid for all of it. And that does not include the dry suit, all those welding tools, like the bill for that person's school was over 6 figures. And without blinking, that VRC paid for that because I had that job lined up. So when I'm talking about VRE, like rehabilitating and training someone to get into a new occupation, not only are they sending them to me to help them get into that job, but if that job has required tools for it, they're going to cover those tools. It's going to result in that veteran getting employed, and the VA gets to say they've been successfully rehabilitated. Right? Question to that.
Getting certified, ABYC, so like marine electrical, going to school, veterans, learning how to work on marine engines, electrical systems, but to get their ABYC to be fully certified. Is that covered?
If that's the requirement for that person to enter into that occupation, that's the argument for getting VRE to pay for it. Okay. Now, for whatever reason, let's say VRE says no. Okay.
We've had issues.
We're going to be looking at we owe an adult. This is a short-term certificate training. Is it something we cover with one of these funding sources? Maybe. I mean, there is a limit. I don't have an unlimited bag of money to pay for stuff. But I've been successful also of that veteran saying, I'll pay for half of it if you can help me pay for the other half. When that veteran's throwing something in the kitty, we know they're committed to it. They're not going to drop out and flake off. Especially if it was like costing $500, they're not going to give up on that. Charlie?
I just wanted to mention too, I didn't know this when I was getting out, but if you're just in general ETS, and I can't think of a single reason why someone wouldn't qualify for dislocated worker and their spouse in that case.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell them to apply to unemployment, but they probably should in that case as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, ma'am.
So in reference to, you guys have kind of mentioned a couple of sergeant major positions. I've worked with some that are senior level military members, and they're getting out. They've talked to some WorkSource or some Work for Warriors type folks, but they're all entry level. How do I propose to them to come to you so that they get to a senior level? Is that an option?
Of course, it's an option. Really, what you're talking about is really hitting issues and nailed right on the head of why these programs even exist with our population. Yes. We're disadvantaged in entering the workforce upon our access to military service. And that includes our senior enlisted or officers.
Yeah.
Officers, I don't really have much experience working with the officer population. It's really the enlisted population. I've always had working with customers, but I don't know.
So I have a major and a lieutenant colonel, and they're like, they want to get, maybe into like what you did, sir, with going into a college working for military and veterans. Is there a niche for that?
We do that. Well, there is. There's still going to be an education requirement. Usually that senior level leadership has probably received some education, so they might meet those requirements. But for the mass majority of those service members who transition out of the military, they're disadvantaged because their peers that they went to high school with, they immediately went into school or they immediately went into the workforce when we went to the military. And when we exit from the military, we're almost starting right where they've already been. We spent 8 years in the military. All our peers have an 8-year head start over us. Even though that military experience has given us some occupational skills, the civilian employer doesn't necessarily recognize those skills and how that applies to the occupation. What's 11 Bravo mean to an employer, right?
Damn thing.
So, so there's this translation problem, and we help with that with trying to show you how to target a resume and translate your skills, but not all those veterans come into a workforce to get that skill. So we're trying to explain it using their Army talk and stuff, and the civilian doesn't understand it. So having to go to school to get those minimum education requirements, that's another 2 to 4 year delay before they can even enter the workforce. So a lot of these programs, a lot of these dollars, not only dollars to them, but to say that they have preference, that they get to go to the front of the line, they get priority of service to access to these benefits is ultimately because of their disadvantaged status.
And correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't WorkSource still do resume and interview skill sets? I know the bases do that too, but to your point, I mean, when I got it, I didn't know how to write a resume, so I think as an officer, yeah, I got some skill sets and education, but I think this is a resource for a senior level to how to write a resume, how to do an interview. I know you didn't touch it, but that's one of those, on the wheel, one of those things I've mentioned.
Yeah, I didn't even talk about how we help you get a job. I'm just talking about
I wrote about 15 resumes and folks like him looked at them.
So I just finished with VRNE in June, and we're school welding fabrication. And we found out as I was going to school, there's actually more, because I live locally, there's more of a draw for mobile welders. They pay for all my mobile welding equipment. A $10,000 welding machine, almost $15,000 in small tools, oxyacetylene. I mean, like they set me up for a job. Plus playing, my final project in school was building a 4x4 welding table. The steel alone for that was $2,700. And I sent it into them and they're like, yeah, we got it, don't worry about it. What do you want to ship? So like, I was not a fan of GI Bill, but VRNE was amazing to work with.
Yep. All right, so wrapping up here real quick, because I'm getting my time notice here. FlexWorksourceWater.com. Because of COVID, we have shifted all our operations to have a virtual ability to serve customers still. So we're available through the clicks, right? All our workshops, resume workshop, interview workshops, strategies for success, courses and stuff like that. We have a virtual component that available for someone whose inability to get into the physical office. So we have not rescinded on that from COVID. We've still got that going forward. And then we've got the bricks, where we're still in office, over 60 locations in the state. That employment assistance, we help with the resume, we help with the interview skills. We also help the employer. Sometimes the employer doesn't know how to write a job description. Like, how do you recruit the right type of people for this job? So we help that. All no cost to the employer, no cost to the job seeker. And it's available to everyone. Refugee status, none of it matters. If you're looking for employment, whoever that person is, you're welcome to just walk in the door and ask for this assistance. And I mentioned the training sources. And additionally, because work sources are located throughout the state, they're tied inherently with their local community. So the community resources, those individual things like automotive repair or something like that, there might be a local nonprofit in the community that can help with just that one thing. Those local workforce offices are going to know where those places exist. So that's it.
That's a 10-year-old picture.
So can you touch on priority of service one more time real quick?
Just priority of service, every American Job Center, veteran, as long as they don't have a dishonorable discharge. Military spouses of a spouse that has died, or their military service member has died because of service-connected disability, or they're 100% service-connected. Those individuals receive priority of service in walking in the door into our workshops, getting access to these training programs. If there is a slot where the CDL program, there's only 15 spots there, and I got 5 veterans that all meet that eligibility and 2 spouses, those 7 are going to get those 7 of those 15 spots. So, survey, take your cell phones out, please, take a little snapshot.